Guys, it's Skill up here, and I'm super excited to be working with Arekkz, a YouTuber who has covered the division since the minute it was announced, and is in my opinion the single best division YouTuber out there. Arekkz, it's good to be working with you, man.
Likewise, man. It's something that I've actually been wanting to do for a while now, so it's good to finally get the chance. Now, Skill Up has done some awesome work explaining how different mechanics work in the division, and something you might have seen me link on Twitter, he also went and made sense of the DPS formula in-game, which, let's be honest, is a bit confusing at the best of times. So yeah, it's definitely great to have a chance to collaborate on a video like this. Anyway, Skill Up, back to you.
Arekkz and I both get heaps of questions about which talents you should be prioritizing on your weapons and gear. So we decided we would do a two-part series covering just that. This video covering weapons is your first stop, and the next video covering gear talents is available on Arekkz's channel right now. So click the link on screen or in the description below to check that one out.
Now, it's safe to say that we've both put a huge amount of work into these videos, so if you do like them, then don't forget to drop a like and subscribe if you want to stay up to date on the latest division content.
Alrighty, so how are we going to do this? Well, since there are a heap of different weapon talents, and we don't want to spend time speaking about every single one of them in detail, we're going to be grouping or tiering talents based on how useful they are. We have 3 tiers for this.
First up, we have top tier. These are the talents that you definitely want on your weapons, and these should therefore be at the forefront of your mind when you're farming and crafting.
Next up, we have situational, and these are talents that can be quite strong depending on your build or playstyle, but generally require some sacrifices in order to get the most out of them.
And then finally, we have the low performing or slightly less desirable talents. We were going to call these kind of trash tier, but some of them are still good. It's just that they have very select uses, often kind of for solo play. So generally speaking, when compared to the other ones, they're not really considered top tier talents. So 9 times out of 10, given the choices, you should generally speaking avoid these.
So let's get to the low performing stuff, and let's get that out the way first. So here you see a list on screen of all the talents that you really shouldn't be featuring into your builds unless you're under very, very certain conditions. Sure, it's fine to have, one of them on your weapons, but you're really sacrificing that talent spot since there are a heap of talents that would do a much better job and are generally speaking far more versatile. So things are super clear. We wanted to call out just a few of these so that you know why these talents are where they are in the list.
Kicking things off with Adept. This gives you a 3% crit chance when you use a skill, but 3% isn't really all that much. And on, say, an SMG build capable of doing anything around 150k DPS, this talent will only see you gaining around 4k DPS, which isn't really worth it when you consider some of the other options.
Capable. Using a skill improves weapon handling, but the fact is weapon handling can be pretty well managed through appropriate mods and personal skills, so this one isn't all that crash hot.
Now, there are a whole bunch of talents that will relate to your signature skills, such as commanding, dominant, trained, and while these talents are awesome when your signature skill is up, the fact of the matter is that your signature skill cooldown is long enough that these talents don't really provide enough overall utility, and you generally won't see them get that much use in the grand scheme of things.
There's a whole bunch of talents that give you a buff when killing a target, such as Predatory, Restored, and Sustained, and to be clear, you do need to land the killing blow in order to proc these talents. So while these talents can be somewhat useful in solo play, the majority of endgame content is very focused on group content, making these talents less than desirable given how hard it will be for you to predictably land killing blows. However, if you love running solo, then absolutely check out these talents because they can be quite good. Finally, Harmful, which procs bleed on your target, is really great for PvP, but you're better off putting this on something like your pistol since you want your main weapons to be benefiting from more efficient damage dealing talents rather than inflicting bleed. The bleed tick does very, very little damage and isn't a great primary perk.
So now let's move on to the next tier of talents, which we're calling situational. Now, these talents are generally pretty decent, but their overall power tends to depend on things like your build or the situation you find yourself in. So the question is, which ones are worth calling out here?
So first of all, there's Competent. It's a talent that increases your weapon damage after using a skill. And since it's possible for some skill power based builds to have almost no cooldowns on their abilities, this talent can be almost read as a flat and constant damage increase.
Intense gives your first bullet in a magazine the chance to inflict the on-fire status effect, and Toxic gives your headshots a chance to inflict the blind effect, both of which have great crowd control uses either for, eliminating their vision or temporarily preventing access to skills and consumables.
Now, we've also included 3 talents here that are dependent upon killing your target. Determined, which reduces skill cooldowns, Meticulous, which instantly reloads your mag, and Talented, which increases skill power. Now, we've already talked about how it can be tricky to get these talents to proc, but the fact of the matter is these procs are very strong. So when they do work, they work very well and can be a really strong contribution to your build, especially if you play solo.
And finally, you have Unforgiving, which increases your damage with each health bar you're missing. And this can actually be a godsend in PvP encounters, where you are typically going to lose a lot more health than, say, if you're fighting an NPC. Plus, that additional 25% damage when you do get low on health can make all the difference in those clutch moments.
So, with that, let's get to the good stuff, the best weapon talents in the game.
The Accurate talent increases your base accuracy by a set percentage, and this stat is super strong. Accuracy is one of the biggest determinants in your DPS because it controls how large your reticle gets over time and how quickly it shrinks back down after you fire. So getting this bonus accuracy on ranged weapons such as marksman rifles and even select assault rifles allows you to fire faster and leads to a higher chance of getting headshots. So that is a great talent.
Next up, we have Balance. Now, we're fairly sure that this talent is bugged at this point because it just seems too damn strong, but in its current form, it's excellent, and it basically removes the need for you to stack any other accuracy on your weapon at all. If it stays the same as it is now, fantastic. It's a God mode, God tier level talent, and if it gets changed, well, we'll have to evaluate that when we get to it.
Now, the Brutal talent increases headshot damage by a certain percent, and there really isn't anything complicated about this. It is just a straight up awesome talent, particularly on weapons that prioritize headshots like marksman rifles and even SMGs, so it's definitely a fantastic talent and one of the strongest in the game.
Cool-Headed is a talent that reduces your skill cooldowns when you perform a headshot and is absolutely awesome on skill power based builds. The Caduceus assault rifle has this baked into it, making it fairly easy to get this talent, and the result when used properly is near instant cooldowns for all of your abilities. And for more info on how to make the most of this talent, how to make it work really well, be sure to check out my video on the topic, which I've linked in the description below.
Now, Deadly is another one of those pretty self-explanatory talents. It increases your critical hit damage. However, it's of course only useful if you have enough crit hit chance. So using it with something like an SMG is great, but using it with, say, an LMG that you haven't modded for high crit chance is significantly less useful, because of course if you're not getting the crits, then you're of course not getting the use of this talent.
Destructive gives you armor destruction in PvE and is unquestionably one of the strongest stats in the game, since it typically rolls at very high values of near 20%, and its value works multiplicatively with other stats, meaning that if you combine it with, say, bonus damage versus elites, you get even more damage than you think you would. This talent is just awesome and a must-have for PvE content.
Ferocious is one of the talents we just mentioned, the one that improves damage to elite enemies. Now, to be clear, elite enemies are the yellow enemies, not the purple ones, and this bonus damage typically rolls at around 13%, making it really, really strong if you are a PvE focused player or you're running a PvE focused build. It does nothing for you in PvP, so do be aware of that, but its utility in PvE is exactly why it's in the tier 1 list.
Fierce gives you bonus critical hit chance and is just superb. More crit equals more damage under every circumstances, so it's a very strong stat. Be aware though that there is a crit cap of 60%, and it's very possible for you to hit that cap with the right combination of gear, talents, and mods. So just be sure that you aren't stacking your crit too high when you are using this talent on your weapon.
Responsive is a talent that increases your damage by a certain percentage when you are within 10 meters of the target. And given that SMGs are the go-to choice right now and that they require you to be close to the target, then this is a very strong stat that you shouldn't overlook. FYI, the Midas SMG actually comes with this talent, so if you are an SMG player, then this is an easy way to get it.
Self-Preserved is another very strong talent in PvE and PvP. It heals you for a percentage of the damage that you deal when you crit, and on most SMG builds, this is going to restore about 1 bar of health over the course of a magazine if you've properly stacked your crit. So that extra life can be extremely helpful whether you're tanking a shotgunner in PvE or fighting rogues in the Dark Zone. So it's good news if you get this on your weapon. It's a really good one. And again, another FYI, the Midas also has this baked into it, making a very strong overall weapon.
Stable is a talent that is very similar to Accurate, which we've discussed above, in that it increases your weapon stability by a certain percentage, meaning that if you get this on a weapon that really needs it, like assault rifles or LMGs, then you can get some remarkably stable bullet patterns. And this is one of those really great but probably quite overlooked talents.
And finally, Vicious, a talent that increases your critical hit chance when you're at full health. Now this usually rolls at around 13%, which is absolutely ridiculous. It's just huge, and if you are able to maintain max health through either healing yourself or running with a healer or using the self-preserve talent to keep yourself topped up, this talent is just incredible.
So that is our tier list of talents, but which are the best of the best? What are our top picks? Skill Up, what do you think?
Alright, well obviously the best talents are going to be depending on your gun, but if you really forced me to pick 3 talents that I couldn't live without, I'd choose Fierce for that bonus crit chance, Deadly for that bonus crit hit damage, and I'd choose Destructive for the bonus damage against armor in PvE. The synergy between these 3 talents is massive since crit hit chance and damage are directly reliant on each other, and armor destruction is multiplicative, and it's just, a straight up huge damage boost against the targets that really matter in PvE, elite enemies.
Now for me, when talking about my top 3, I'm pretty much in the same boat as Skill Up here. I play as a tank and I am a heavy SMG user, so Fierce and Deadly are definitely 2 skills that I don't really like to go without. However, Destructive is one of those kind of ones that I currently have it on one of my SMGs, but given that it only has utility in PvE, it's one of those things that I would probably swap out for either Brutal or Responsive. Brutal simply because the added headshot damage paired with Fierce and Deadly is of course a pretty lethal combination, and Responsive simply because the way that I play in the Dark Zone, I'm normally up in people's faces, be they AI enemies or players. I tend to fight within 10 meters. So while a lot of players might not get the use out of that one, that is a talent that I most definitely would use.
So that's it guys, don't forget that this was part 1 of a 2-part series. The other video covering gear talents is now available over at Arekkz's channel, so click that link to watch that one now. As we've said before, we've put a heap of work into this and we've had a lot of fun while doing it, so if you'd like to see more videos and more collaborations from us, then please be sure to drop a like below and don't forget to subscribe. For now though, take good care, peace out, and we look forward to seeing you in the Dark Zone. Bye bye.